But I'm not really.
We ordered them, but we didn't get them.
No, shirts, I've got a shirt yet.
Too long.
Yep. The other day,
Oh, you popped up on that.
they sent the shirts to here and all.
Yes,
I didn't know either.
Rob
They
will
don't
bring them
talk
down.
about it.
Good morning, councillors.
If there's something from me.
Good morning, councillor, staff and visitors to the gallery. I declare the meeting open. Federation Council wishes to advise members of the public that council meetings will be recorded and be available after each meeting on council's website. All care will be taken to maintain the privacy of those in attendance. However, as a visitor in the public gallery, your presence may be recorded. While remaining in the public gallery, it is assumed your consent is given in the event your image is broadcast. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we are meeting today, the Bangarang people, and acknowledge the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who now reside in this area. I extend that respect to elders past and present of the Bangarang nations. I now call for any apologies. And we have a recommendation there that apologies be received from Councillor Longley and Mrs. Kay, Director of Corporate and Community Services, be accepted. Moved by Councillor Longmire, seconded by Councillor Law. All in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Applications for leave of absence. There's a recommendation there, and including that would be Councillor Kennedy. So there's an extra for that recommendation. If you're comfortable with that, Councillor Kennedy has come in. Have you got that up, Rochelle? Okay, could I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Law, seconded by Councillor Meagle. All in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Would someone like to confirm the minutes of the last meeting, please? Moved by Councillor Kennedy, seconded by Councillor Wales. All in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Disclosures of interest, there be none, and Merrill minutes. I'll now move on to the General Manager's report.
Thank you,
Mr. General Manager.
Mr Mayor. 7.1 is a report on RAMJO, the Riverina and Murray Joint Organisation Statement of Strategic Regional Priorities, 4-year plan. The report's there for the information of Council. It's an important strategic planning document that will guide that region of councils, organisation of councils over the next 4 years, and Federation Council has had input onto that and is on the working committee, so recommendations before you.
So move with the question, please.
Yes, Councillor Longmire. Sorry, I'll get a mover and a seconder. First, Councillor Meagle, seconded by Councillor Thomas. Now, Councillor Longmire, would you like to ask?
If I may, Mr Mayor, in regard to the representation on Area 6, is that the only, obviously it's the only area we have got a representative. Was there any discussion or any thoughts towards more representation on the opportunity at those sectors?
Yeah, I could take that one. There's certainly a range of other, well, they're all key areas where the council has great interest in. The numbers on all those are fairly strong, but in saying that, we could easily, it's not a set criteria, we could easily join any of those other groups if councils wish to, because it's really a matter, we talked about that at that meeting most recently, it's a matter of what input or duplication we want to avoid, making sure we don't create a whole bunch of other working groups and layers where GMs or others have to go and do a lot of work that can then create a lot of cumbersome processes when it feeds back up to the board. So it's sort of a work in progress really to develop under those what strategies, and each section I think will take a different approach depending on the topic. But certainly, you know, water security, I mean, that's the one I'm leading to on that, but we could get representation on that if that's the way the council.
At what level, Mr Butler, in regard, or is it general manager representation at that level, is it?
Well, they discussed that around the table at the first meeting the other day when they adopted this, and it was about the GM or their delegate, so it was really up to them. In the case of the industry workforce and jobs, I'll be imagining that would be in our economic development team. It's a bit like how the old Ramrock set up with planners and engineers and others heading off to different subgroups.
Yes.
And then we could go as needed, but yeah, trying to push the specialists into those areas. Yep.
Okay, thank you for that.
But I'll take that on board, and we can get representation on the water.
Councillor Thomas.
I fully endorse what my fellow council on my head, because that was something I really wanted to flag with council, is why we were only being represented on one of the 6 key strategies that have been put forward by RAMJO. And the other thing I would have liked to have talked on was some of the facts and figures that have come out of the report. And I actually think when you look at that REMJO have compiled an employment by industry and gross regional product table, and I think that data, interestingly enough, is quoted 2006, 2011, 2016, and the regional product is populated from 2017, and as we move forward to 2018 and 2019, it'll be interesting to see how much of a change, considering that Murray's still sitting on 0 water allocation, Murrumbidgee's sitting on 7% water allocation, and all of a sudden we've got really major industry bodies because of it reflecting that and the flow-on effects that, loss of jobs, economic development, especially in some of those sectors, outlined within that format. And the other really interesting point of call was when you look at the population dynamics and how they sat, and especially in terms of health and multi-purpose service centres, and how that they highlighted, what we have in our own site, our major hospital, and also at Urana. And I'm thinking the support services could be something that could come up with REMJO if you're based on those figures that they presented in that plan. Thank you.
Absolutely. And can I just make a comment in relation to that topic? I did raise it at RAMJO, and that was the fact that this council is a member of the Murray-Darling Association. And I thought, to a certain degree, are we reinventing the wheel as RAMJO? A lot of those people around the table were member councils of the association. So, why not put our strength into the Murray-Darling Association to do that legwork and bring all our information out, and we can air our concerns with that authority. But by doing it back in RAMJO, we're doubling up. We're doubling up on a service we're already trying to pay for and commit to properly. So that was just one concern I had with that part of the other way would have been all councils more support for the association and make it a stronger body. Councillor Longmire.
Yeah, that's a good point you make, Mr Mayor, in regard to doubling up, because I think as we go forward, there's a report on Mr Butler's coming forward in regard to us supporting the opportunity to seek funding for the MDA. I think we can elaborate a bit further on that, with an expression of what we can do and what's best in the journey of transition, what you've just mentioned. I think it'd be, it's all valuable, it's connected. Certainly, as Councillor Thomas quite rightly mentioned, the economic deficit that's going to come about because of no water available, which effectively is part of our shire with the West Koorugan scheme, it will be catastrophic in some ways.
Sorry. Councillor Meagle.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just whilst everybody's promoting those 6 items, the energy security and affordability, I think, is paramount. It's something that, from an economic point of view, needs to really be targeted, given the propensity for solar generation in this area, and which is already starting to happen, as we're seeing around the Shire. And I think from a regional perspective, in providing affordable and secure energy in terms of economic development that just about every industry uses, is also something that we need to be looking at, because I'm not sure how they're going, under what part of council that's going to work with, but perhaps we need to have some input into that as well.
Thank you, Councillor Meagle. If that's all councillors, I'll put it all in favour. Against, carried.
7.2 is the report on the council decision on the administration of the September 2020 ordinary elections. Recommendation is there that council enter into a contract for the electoral commissioner to administer all the elections of the council, and some procedural recommendations required there, and at the end it talks towards recommending that council share the 2020 electoral costs where opportunities arise at Albury and Greater Hume councils, as was the case for the former Cora Shire, and that's been endorsed by those councils.
Moved by Councillor Meagle, seconded by Councillor Wales. Any questions or comments? If not, I'll put it all in favour. Against, carried.
7.3, Public Interest Disclosures Report. We're required to submit to the Ombudsman any public interest disclosures that we've received through that 6-month period. The report's there for noting. Need a mover and seconder? Yep.
Moved by councillor Thomas, seconded by councillor Law. Any questions or comments? If not, I'll put it all in favour. Against, carried.
7.4, councils are aware through briefing that the Local Government Remuneration Tribunal has called for comments on the review of fees payable to the Mayor and councillors, and also overall consideration generally on council's categories under that system. So we completed a submission to that tribunal recommending that they increase the fees by the maximum amount, but they also give consideration towards the increased workload on councils generally across the state, and the lack of progress that the state government's made in implementing many of the recommendations from the reform processes from 2013 onwards around better remuneration for councillors and their role, and recognising the increased training and information and processes that council laws are meant to be across and are across. So the recommendations there that we support that submission to the tribunal.
So moved.
Overwhelming response. Moved by councillor Longmire, seconded by councillor Law. Any questions or comments? If not, councillor Meagle.
Yeah, I will just make one comment, Mr. Mayor, because I think it needs to be publicly recorded that certainly since the amalgamation, the game has changed as far as councillors having had some experience prior to the amalgamation and now after. But certainly the workload and the expectation of the community has increased. As the General Manager also noted, the expectation from the state government on the compliance, regulation, training and other issues that they're requiring of councillors these days doesn't seem to be comparable with what the remuneration is regarding the effort that we're asked to take. And that's been dictated to by the state government, and yet they're not wanting to pay any more for it. And considering that we've effectively halved the number of councillors supporting the same geographic area. So I really do support the submission that the Federation Council has made to this body. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Meagle. Councillor Wales, did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, being on the former Coro Council, I probably support councillor Meagle, but I have to watch this stuff.
Yeah.
I just noticed in terms of, even though the overall review of the categories is not till next year, looking back at the website on their determinations for last year, they considered Leatonshire Council put forward an application to be changed from the rural to the regional rural. So did Hilltops, one of the new councils with Young, Harden and Boorowa. They were both unsuccessful because the tribunal are saying that until the state changes the category thing, they're really just stuck within those frameworks, but the category doesn't allow enough differentiation or enough consideration of councils. You don't have to have a regional airport and a big referral hospital. It's either that or you're down to your 5,000 or 3,000 population councils. It doesn't allow for those middle growing councils through 12, 13 to 20,000 population, and that brings all that extra expectation and Murray River, etc. So we sort of strengthened up that a bit since the briefing.
Thank you. If there's no further comments, I'll put it all in favour. Aye. Against, carried.
7.5 is a very important report. Their recommendation to note the report, but it's around the merger implementation plan and the Stronger Communities Progress Report. So that report's on progress on our implementation of the merger, both the merger funding as well as the Stronger Communities project, as at 31 December 2018.
Moved by councillor Thomas, seconded by councillor Law. Any questions, councillor Thomas?
In regards to the major projects that are listed within the table, I would like to discuss with council the possibilities of establishing a working group in regards to Kiffin's Reserve and the improvements and the allocated funding. In conversation with people and community groups locally, I've come up with 11 key stakeholders who'd be quite keen to have input into those improvements for Kiffin's Reserve. So if you could consider having a working group or a couple of roundtable discussions, it would greatly benefit those people who would like to have input. And the other point of call too is, as we're aware, some of these projects have been sitting on our books obviously since our administration days. So it might be an opportunity now to actually bring them forward and do some media around them again, just to bring, because questions are being asked when the delivery of these projects are going to occur. especially some of the high profile ones, because you've got to also consider that some of these major projects do have public funds that have contributed to them. So obviously when there's public funds involved, people ask questions.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you.
Would you like to add that in, or to the recommendation?
Probably doesn't need to go in the recommendation, but we've certainly taken those notes and taken it on board, yeah. Yep.
If there's nothing further, I'll put it. All in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried.
7.6, a brief report on changes to the Citizenship Code. So the code's recently undergone a review. Key changes are outlined there that councils are required to hold ceremonies on Australia Day and Australian Citizenship Day. So there's some dates there obviously for those, and there's some other standards around press codes, etc. And that's there for the council to note and recommending to endorse those changes.
Okay, moved by Councillor Kennedy, seconded by Councillor Law. Any questions or comments? Councillor Thomas.
No, it's all good.
Yeah, okay. Okay, I'll put it. All in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried.
7.7 brings forward the minutes from the Audit, Risk and Improvement Committee. It's Council's internal committee that looks across under an audit improvement program all aspects of Council's operations. So that committee last met on the 19th of October 2018, and they're due to meet very shortly. So those draft minutes come through, haven't been to the committee as such, but the process is they come through to Council for noting those minutes ahead of that meeting coming up.
Moved by Councillor Meagle, seconded by Councillor Whitechurch. Any questions or comments? If not, I'll put it. All in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried.
7.8 is a report to note the additional merger funding new council implementation fund funding agreement. So the council have been briefed before on the additional funding that all merged councils received late last year from surplus funding that the government had on merger that did not go ahead, some mergers that did not go ahead. So the recommendations there that council note the report on the additional merger funding, and council will be workshopping this afternoon in further detail on that those extra funding projects. But the ones that are noted that are agreed on are outlined in the table. So.
Moved by Councillor Meagle, seconded by Councillor Kennedy. Any questions or comments? If not, I'll put it. All in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried.
Murray-Darling Association motion, so report 7.9. This is a reasonably lengthy report, very important report. Comes off the back of a key strategic planning workshop that the Murray-Darling Association held, attended by Federation Council a few weeks back in Moama. So the strength of this report is based off it's a group report recommending that the recommendation is at the end that the council support the Murray-Darling Association in its bid to secure recurrent funding for the provision of effective consultation and engagement with council's Murray-Darling Basin communities through their local representatives, and will write to the local and state federal members to lobby for this request, and also write to all non-member councils in our region encouraging those councils to join the Murray-Darling Association.
Moved by Councillor Thomas, seconded by Councillor Longmire. Any questions or comments?
You go first.
Councillor Thomas.
It was such a privilege to attend this workshop in Echuca a few weeks ago, not only for making lots of connections right across the basin, but also to come away with a really tangible motion, and that was the aim. I just felt at times we were a little bit stuck in our seats. I thought, no, we really have to get a motion on the table, which we have achieved, and which is great. So all those member LGAs are sitting at their February meetings, looking at pulling together a motion that we're all going to be consistent with, which is really exciting. The other exciting thing, which I think that Federation Council should consider and maybe take it to the next board meeting, would be putting in an expression of interest to host one of the connecting catchment and community sessions. And they're looking at one for Albury to Adelaide, and you can host throughout the year, but I think it would be really good because the first one's coming up and the Wentworth Shire are hosting it. It's Menindee to the Murray Mouth. But wouldn't it be exciting to host one here locally? You know, it would be great for our region on so many levels, but I'd really like to recommend to the council they could put an expression of interest in to say, yep, we're keen to host on the back of what we've just experienced.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Don't add that to the...
Would you like to add that to the recommendation?
Yeah, no,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, if we can do that.
Okay.
so wording used, connecting catchments and communities, there are a series of inter-regional forums.
Okay, moved and seconded, happy with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you want to speak, Councillor Longmore?
If I may.
Yeah.
I think it was two and a half days, I think, but at times there were 12 member councils, regions more importantly. I think there's 72, get the numbers right, 72 member councils, there's 100 not members, I think. That's the number.
71 paid and 172 unpaid.
Thank you for that. So really, you know, it's not as active as what it, and yet it's so important. The membership, I think the collective membership is 282,000 in membership fees. I mean, this has really got to a point, it's a joke, absolutely, because you've got so many regions across the basin that are sitting around the table, and local government representatives that are really in touch with the community, no better a level of government to have that occurring. And so, but what I noticed in the discussion and the workshopping was that there were many practical ideas put forward, many practical ideas. But then in some ways, and with no disrespect, it was overcome by some positions that are relating always to the environment. Now, in real context, people that are practical and we can talk about the community in general, we're all worried and concerned about the environment. There's no question about it. But it was dominated by some of these representatives that seemed to think that it was the most important thing in the schedule. But if we look upon our own area, our own council area, and we have the largest private irrigation scheme in Australia that at the moment is dormant. And it not only comes and affects the Federation Council, it affects the Berrigan Council, and over to the west, and the Jerilderie Council. And just by, if I may, Mr Mayor, read some notes about the paper that was put out by the West Kooragang Authority when the MDBA put their draft opportunity out. And remember, this plan that the MDBA have initiated is for 12 years. There's another 6 years before there's a finalisation of it. I think I've got that right. In 2024. So there's still an opportunity for a lot of leg work to be done. But in regard to the West Kooragang, which was initiated, I think, in 1969, and if I can just quote a couple of numbers, if I may, Mr Mayor, in regard to and refer to the notes here, there's, it serves over 212,000 hectares, and it's between the Murray River and the Billabong Creek. The area is bounded, you know, by all our towns within our community. The allocation is at currently, or at this time when the paper was done in 2011, was 80-odd thousand megalitres, delivered to 330-odd different properties throughout the area. And also, it goes on to say about other things, but the return, the economic return, based on the performance back 8 years ago, was $90 million. So what would it be today? With the price of livestock and the grain prices, and we've only got to look upon the Aquifer 015 especially, to the north-east of our communities, our shire. The centre pivots and the production, double cropping, all the rest of it, it's enormous. And yet, under the allocation of water from the Murray River, which Victoria still have an opportunity, South Australia still have an opportunity, but New South Wales has got nothing. And so effectively, the hurt that came upon our farmers in our shire last year was that there was no opportunity for any minimum water allocation to finish their crops. So I think it's important that somebody within the higher levels of government, of state and federal, needs to have a good look at some of this stuff and say, let's get on with it and support the opportunity to, certainly with the MDA, to go forward. And I also would ask and endorse the fact that we're going to ask the neighbouring, or the non-member councils to stand up as well. I mean, this is so important to not only us, but for the viability. And if you drive out to our neighbouring shire and go through Finley and these places, it's terrible. There's thousands of hectares with no water, dairy cows that are really struggling. And I think the emphasis has to be adopted and put somewhere through our budding politicians coming forward at the state and federal election, that this is a big platform thing to go forward with. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, I think Councillor Longmire has added to that the Ramjo has the one main employee. The Murray-Darling Association has one main employee, which is pretty insignificant when you look at the importance of the issue. And I think that's what a lot of the gripe is. They do need a bit more grunt and staff, but they have got the ear of the feds and the state governments. So I would suggest that we even write to whether it be Ramjo as our council's personal feelings, that we give it as much grunt as we possibly can, enough strength to be the peak representative body they claim to be, because we do need someone intimately working on it the whole time, the most important issue we've got, as you've just said. So thank you.
Did you want to add Ramjo to the...
I think so. Would you?
Yes.
Would you?
Absolutely.
I would endorse adding Ramjo to our agenda
Yep.
and our motion and our recommendation for that reason, because MDA need to have the capacity to deliver on some of these really, really important issues that are facing not only rural and regional Australia, but the flow-on effects even to our major metropolitan is going to be there as well, unless they take a stand. And also, I think clarification probably needs to be given the role MDA plays in terms of LGA representation, and not only LGA representation, but our local community representation in terms of delivering the basin plan.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right, that's good. And would there be any further discussion on that?
I think just quickly on the zones, where it comes back to is, and I know for a fact that even the member councils in some places would just pay their thing and turn up at a zone meeting, and it was almost like a tick the box. And we've seen that situation in some regards with the Yanko Creek issue, and it's not the fault of any of the zones itself, but a lot of the work at Moama, even though it seemed a bit dry and heavy and we were looking inwards all the time, but it was about trying to get that momentum to make each zone work for those councils in that zone, and it took also towards realigning the zone boundaries to be consistent where it suited each, you've got to remember it's 3 states, but where we've got JOs, joint organisations, some of the councils set up on a catchment basis, so we've got councils right down to Gippsland and Bor and places, and some of them have never even turned up or whatever. So if we're trying to engage members, new members, there's also a situation where we need to redraw the boundaries where it's suited in the JO, and I think Ramjo, as part of our letters of support, that we'd be sort of trying to push that along so it doesn't sit around another 3 or 4 years and get talked about, and that would then allow that that group, like the Mayor had said, so we're not duplicating and creating all these other little working groups to meet after a Ramjo on that day and have their zone meeting and have relevant mayors and others there at that time, because most of the Ramjo is dominated by water, let's face it. So even the board meeting the other day, you had the Murray-Darling Basin socio-economic representatives, so it's always there. So we don't need to be driving off into Albury 3 weeks later and having a round table on a zone thing. So that'd be our strong push, that we do make the zone work for us a lot better.
It was interesting with the economist that was there the other day. Certainly the figures acknowledge, and those figures will come through to council, they acknowledge the downturn in industry. Finley in particular was a big decrease in population, young families leaving, old families, businesses closing. So very devastating there. But also added to that was the changeover of crops from rice to cotton has had a big effect as well on employment, etc., and industry. Thank you, Councillor Tom.
Just one more on the changeover crops. One of the biggest issues facing water is the increase in permanent planting, orchards, citrus, almonds, that kind of thing. Yeah, that's the biggest. Which
aligns to that statement. Absolutely. Any further comments or questions? We've covered that off fairly well.
Those extra ones,
We've got the extra ones there. The movers happy with those?
Yep.
Okay, I'll put it all in favour. Against, carried.
7.10 is a report on our integrated planning and reporting, our IPNR, which is our overall planning framework, including budget. So that outlines the 2019-2020 operational plan and the 18 to 21 delivery program timeline and budget. Runs through the background of where the council are at. There's also a further report coming along about the progress of our current plan, but this outlines a draft schedule there. Councillors may wish to comment and have some input around more involvement, interaction in the setting up of our budget for next year.
Can I move, please, Councillor? Moved by Councillor Whitechurch, seconded by Councillor Kennedy. Any questions or comments? Councillor Whitechurch.
Mr Mayor, if I could, and I've spoken to the General Manager briefly about the timeline and the progress of moving through to our 20th of June adoption of that policy. I just look back and I guess I'll lean on some of our past councillors for a little bit of advice here. I see that if we're doing a budget that we're going to be firstly brought in on the 21st of May, get all this stuff starts at the 8th of February, I would have thought that perhaps councillors would have been able to refer back to the community strategic plan that we did when we first came on council, have a look what was derived from the whole community when we did all the meetings, had a look where we've gone in our first year of budget in relation to that, which the report does say that we're looking at that, or our senior staff and directors are looking at that. But then moving forward to the next year's budget, where would council get an input to be able to say, you know, we think that this should be included in the budget, and could the director of that particular area see if that can be fitted into the scope of works, if it all fits for the thing. I just don't see in this timeline, the first time council has come in is the 21st of May, for the opportunity to review any significant changes required. Is it something that we should be workshopping back at right as early as now, with a report to compare our community strategic plan? Just some advice.
Thank you.
Refer that to Director of Finance.
Thank you. This is the shortened version of the timeline, and for the 8th of April Policy and Resources briefing session, that's when it's programmed for a more in-depth discussion of all sorts of issues that councillors might want to bring up. So you get a lot more of the detail in various areas of interest, particular of interest to councillors. So what you see here is basically some of the more major time slots that we're trying to meet within the process. And the plan is that you should have a lot of the documentation a week before that 8th of April meeting, so you're not coming in cold on it, and then we can rework, work on additional areas that were brought up at that meeting, so that when it comes out at this 16th of April date, you're seeing a lot of that incorporated back into the work that's been done.
Yeah, we'll get started.
Councillor Smith, thank you for that, Mr Parker, and I guess in light of that, certainly the council is going to be involved. I just find that when councillors, and again I refer back to people who've been on council before, we tend to be obviously the middleman between the decision making or the policies and the ratepayers and the general public. It's a pretty poor answer when you have to give back to the ratepayers, oh, it's not in next year's budget, or we'll have to make allowance for it the following year. I think that if we've got something to bring to the table, or it's been mentioned in the previous year and we haven't perhaps thought about it, it's our opportunity to make the direction and guide where our town and our ratepayers want to go, if that was...
Absolutely, and if you're setting policies, it's good to have your finger on the pulse. So going along with your suggestion, I think it's a great one, and maybe if we could fit in a workshop, a council workshop. I realise March is going to be a difficult one when I look at the apologies earlier, but just to have a look at the journey and see where we're tracking and where we're going with the next year. Would that be of interest to councillors to try and Councillor Meagle?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I fully endorse the opportunity to be involved as early as possible, as Councillor Whitechurch has said. It's our opportunity to bring from the community to council their requests, and then it all gets thrown into the mix to see what the officers can work with and what we can afford to do and what we can't afford to do, and over what time frame we can afford to do it. So if we could have a workshop in March, we can have then the briefing session in April when the work's been done, and so we have, as Councillor Whitechurch stated, a greater understanding of how the final budget has been arrived at, and therefore greater information to pass back to the community.
And a good chance to refresh. We could discuss that further as far as the timing goes in the workshop this afternoon, if that suits. Okay. Any further comments? If not, I'll put it all in favour. Against, carried.
7.11 is the Integrated Planning and Reporting 6-monthly report on our delivery program and operational plan 18-19. So that's progress up till end of December, and that report's there for notation, has now been made available on our website, etc. So it's obviously a key guiding document as to what the community strategic plan delivered down through the 4-year and the, well, in our case, the 3-year and the 1-year plan. And key to what you were just speaking about, I'm sure, is understanding what's in there and how that links to our financial statements and reports. So that's there for councillors to note, and really important information to workshop through as we set up our next budget.
I've got to move that Councillor Thomas and a second to Councillor Whitechurch. Questions or comments, Councillor Thomas?
I just noticed that you, I was just making a request, can we actually add that link to our councillor portal, please? Thank you.
Thank you. Would there be any further comments? If not, I'll put it. All in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried.
7.12, 7.12 is a financial assistance policy that has been out on exhibition and now comes back to council to consider adoption. There were no submissions received for that policy, but it is a very important policy to formalise council's approach in terms of range of refunds and other requests for donations back to local organisations and individuals that would qualify. And that goes towards things even as simple as development application fees and things like that on community assets and facilities. So that's come through, and the recommendation is for adoption and review every 2 years or as needed.
Moved by Councillor Kennedy, seconded by Councillor Law. Any questions or comments? If not, I'll put it. All in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried.
7.13, recruitment of senior staff, is a confidential report. The recommendation is there to defer that report to the closed session.
Moved by Councillor Meagle, seconded by Councillor Whitechurch. All in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried.
7.14, General Manager 6-month performance review, confidential. Recommendation also to defer that report until the closed session.
Moved by Councillor Law, seconded by Councillor Thomas. All in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried.
That's the end of the General Manager's report.
Okay, we'll now ask for the Director of Corporate and Community Services report.
So in the absence of our Director, I've put forward 3 reports under that section for information. The first report is the 2019 Australia Day event held down there at Mulwala on the foreshore, which was a terrific event. The recommendation is to host a small afternoon tea to congratulate all Australia Day nominees, award winners and the recent Order of Australia medalists.
Okay, moved by Councillor Kennedy, seconded by Councillor Whitechurch. Any questions or comments? Councillor Thomas.
You know, it was it was a success, and the community is still talking about the ceremony, the civil ceremony, and especially our ambassador's address to the community. It was very well received. I just really would like to acknowledge that Mr. Alex Sloan, because he was able to come in and open up the Mulwala Museum for the ambassador and his wife that afternoon. And he did that because it was actually closed, because they had an arrangement with the ski club to actually always close it that day, but he was able to come in and open it. And they had their own personal tour, which worked out really well, because Jeremy's grandfather had an affiliation with Sir John Monash. The Sir John Monash exhibition was still in there, so it was really good for him to see it, because as we were aware, what is in that exhibition is a lot of one-off pieces. So it was really, really good. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas, and I should acknowledge the work of councillors in that time. There was a couple of functions on there. We had the Federation dinner, as well as councillors had to entertain our ambassador. So thank you very much for those councillors and the work you did on that day, Councillor Thomas. Entertaining was fantastic. Councillor Longmire.
If I may ask a question, Mr Mayor, has there been any feedback in regard to the current format of award winners? Has there been any comment back to council in regard to not having individual town Australia Day winners like there used to be in the old times? Because I have heard in one section of the community, you know, why is it happening the way? I think we went over it and had a good look at it at the time, but there is a question being asked why individual towns don't have their own Australia Day winner.
Councillor Longmire, would you...
Local achievers.
Yeah, like local achievers.
They do, yeah, I think the discussion was around that, and I think the councillors on that committee will know as well, but I understood the local achiever award for each town, if they have submissions, is where that fell to. So instead of having an Australian Citizen of the Year for X and Y and all those towns, it was the local achiever for that area. Yeah, I think that was why the criteria.
Councillor Thomas.
Back on that committee, I think we probably really need to encourage our Rennies, our Savonaks, our Lovedales of the world to actually look at their local achievers, because they've all got local achievers out there. Like, you think about people that we know at Oakland, they've all got them. But I don't know whether you probably need to review the application process or the timing of the application process. There might be just things that council might have to review, because we do really need to be looking at, and the other thing too is that some of our local achievers, we all know them, but sometimes they feel quite embarrassed or humbled to be actually acknowledged in the public arena as well. I don't know how you go around that.
Thank you. Councillor Longmire, did you want to elaborate on that? Were you thinking more individual town?
Well, perhaps our smaller communities, the smaller communities, it's a contact plea that we align ourselves to our major, town, like Mulwalla's got your Rennie and Coro's got your Burriga and Hopefield and perhaps Howlong's a bit different over there. But certainly it's come to my attention that there's people in Howlong have said to me, they would like it to be known that, they used to have a Citizen of the Year for Howlong, and the achiever certainly has some recognition, but it doesn't have the status as a Citizen of the Year of the community. And I'm talking perhaps certainly Mulwala, Corowa and Howlong, Urana, and perhaps Oakland as well. I think that is, whether that's over the top, I don't know. With the combination of it, the culmination of it is a Citizen of the Year. It can go on and on, but just something worthy having a review of.
Yep.
Councillor Longmire, would you then have a grand, like
Overall
Citizen of the Year and then an overall one, or would you just leave it at that?
I think it's for some more informed people than me. I'm bringing the idea to the table in regard to just something that is a discussion point.
Councillor Ward.
I like the Local Achiever Award, and as you can see, the Citizen of the Year was one of the local achievers, and so there's nothing to stop the small villages from entering a local achiever, but they've got to get up and enter, and that's the problem. Maybe a little bit more advertising and making the smaller villages more familiar with it, but it certainly is. I think we're going to go a bit overboard if we're going to have one for every little town, and I think the local achiever, then the Citizen of the Year could be taken out of those local achievers, and that would be our citizens for the whole of the council.
Well, Councillor Law, I was just thinking, when you listen to those titles, Local Achiever and then Citizen of the Year, well, if you had a Citizen of the Year for Mulwala, Howlong, etc., a Citizen of the Year, it's got a nice ring to it, and then an overall Federation Council Citizen of the Year. So you're only converting the name from Local Achiever to Citizen of the Year, but it does sound a little bit more formal, I suppose.
Anyway,
good opportunity to talk. Councillor Wells.
Thanks, Matt. Unfortunately, I was unavailable to attend the Australia Day Awards in Mulwala, but may I personally, through the council, thank all the recipients for their awards given, and also Peter Wright, who received no aim, which I can personally understand how thrilled he must be to receive that nomination.
Thank you, Councillor Wells. If there be no more discussion, councillors, I'll put it. All in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried.
8.2 is a report on 2018 Light Up Federation, so that was a fantastic initiative through the community section, community development events team and comms team to prepare the program, and the award winners were given out down there on Australia Day, which was very well received, and the report's there just to note that initiative, Council.
Moved by Councillor Meagle, seconded by Councillor Kennedy. Any questions or comments? If not, I'll put it all in favour.
Aye.
Against, carried.
Last report, 8.3, is on the 2019 Federation Community Calendar, just to provide Council with an overview of the 2019 Federation Community Calendar project. So that's a calendar that gets created and distributed to all homes in the Federation region. The report's there for information. It contains a great list of events right across the region, and it also included the photo competition to inform those those months, those calendars.
Moved by Councillor Whitechurch, seconded by Councillor Wales. Any questions or comments? If not, I'll put it. All in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried. Now,
Finance.
thank you. Now I'll ask for the Director of Finance and Organisational Developments report. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. First report, councillors, 9.1, statement of bank balances and reconciliation as at the end of January 2019, to be then noted.
Moved by Councillor Kennedy, seconded by Councillor Meagle. Any questions or comments? If not, I'll put it. All in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried.
9.2, councillors, the schedule of investments is the same date.
There's a recommendation moved by Councillor Meagle, seconded by Councillor Kennedy. Any questions or comments? If not, I'll put it. All in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried.
Councillors, the next report, 9.3, is the required quarterly budget review as at the end of the second quarter, which is the 31st of December. There's a number of items listed in the report where additional budgets were noted as being required and the reasons for those. The operating statement is, the report there shows that they're still in surplus to the tune of 159,000 in the table under consolidated. For councillors to note the report and adopt the quarterly statement as presented.
Thank you. Can I move it, please? Moved by Councillor Thomas, seconded by Councillor Kennedy. Any comments or questions? Councillor Thomas.
Mr Parker, I noticed in the quarterly budget review statement with the budget variations, and you might be able to answer this for me. I noticed there was 2 insurance claims and an increase in insurance expenses. Are you able to make comment?
Yes, there's a couple of claims, and we do actually have a reserve set aside that we've set up from changes to the way that we had deductibles operating in the last few years. We increased the limit, saved some premium, put that aside. So we've had a claim to do with trucks for one, and a break-in at the depot, and the difference in that those claims, the expected payouts, etc., will be covered out of the reserve. That's why it's not in the net change.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillors, if not, I'll put it. All in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried.
9.4, councillors, is just bringing back 2 policies that have been on exhibition in late 2018. One was the fraud and corruption policy, that in particular the Auditor General's office encouraged us to have separate from our procurement policy, and the second one is the chain of responsibility policy for adoption by councillors.
Moved by Councillor Longline, seconded by Councillor Law. Any questions or comments? If not, I'll put it. All in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried.
9.5, councillors, is just the update of the Economic Development Action Plan for our council. One of the things that I will do now is, having received the Statement of Strategic Regional Priorities from our RAMJO, is there's no problem in realigning our reporting to more match that sort of structure, because then we're making sure that we're working in together with that organisation. So that in mind, the real heavy work in this last quarter has been working on the expressions of interest for the aerodrome to better utilise the asset and over the coming years. So, councillors, if you could note the report, please.
Moved by Councillor Kennedy, seconded by Councillor Whitechurch. Any questions or comments, councillors? If not, I'll put it. All in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried.
9.6, councillors, on the report that was put into council in March 2018, the resolution did not contain the necessary comment to apply the common seal of council, so that this report is to correct that issue so that the mayor and the seal can be applied to the contracts we have.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Wales, seconded by Councillor Kennedy. All in favour? Against? Carried.
Councillors, the 9.7 is a preliminary research and investigation into the possible pricing when the Mulwala Industrial Subdivision Stage 6 is actually constructed. Lots of information in this confidential report, commercial in confidence, a lot of it, and so it's been put to have the report discussed in committee.
Moved by Councillor Meagle, seconded by Councillor Law. Any questions or comments? If not, I'll put it. All in favour? Against? Carried.
Council's last report in my section, 9.8, is the Cora Aerodrome Agreement to lease, commercial and confidence issues, as well as issues to do with conditions and so forth. So that's recommended to that report to go to the committee.
Okay, moved by Councillor Law, seconded by Councillor Kennedy. Any questions or comments, councillors? If not, I'll put it. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you, Mr. Parker.
Thank you, councillors and Mr. Mayor.
What do you do? Yep, okay, now we'll ask for the Director of Infrastructure and Environment report. Thanks, Steve.
I thought I was only the acting director.
Acting Director.
Been promoted.
Item 10.1 is building approvals during the last month, which as we discussed the other day are down again, but a lot of this now goes out to private certifiers,
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Meagle, seconded by Councillor Kennedy. Any questions or comments? If not, I'll put it. All in favour? Against? Carried.
and 10.2 is our development applications approved under delegated authority since the last meeting.
Moved by Councillor Meagle, seconded by Councillor Law. Any questions or comments, councillors? If not, I'll put it. All in favour? Against? Carried.
Item 10.3 is the Food Regulation Partnership. You'll just note in that report that we have 86 registered food businesses in the council area. It is pleasing to note that under this round of inspections that we didn't have any that failed. So we all had either a 5, 4 or a 3-star rating, and the report is therefore it's a lengthy report, but it goes on and there is a recommendation at the end that we continue to participate and we work with the local retailers to ensure that we all go home safely after a night out.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Whitechurch, seconded by Councillor Meagle. Question, Councillor Meagle.
Just a comment, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's really pleasing. 96% of those businesses were in 4 stars or more, and up from 75% when it was done the last time. And that's, I think, council should acknowledge the effort of local retailers and businesses to lift their standard for the benefit of the community as a whole. And certainly, I would think that we should continue to proceed with this now that we've got it to such a good standard, because I think that's a vote of confidence. The number of people that visit this area, that we do have a good standard of food delivery.
Thank you, Councillor Meagle. Councillor Whitechurch.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I agree with Councillor Meagle on that. It's great to see that the standard's certainly lifted, and I think that the training as far as food safety officers and all the stuff that's now compliant or to be compliant, you've got to be aware of it whether you like it or not. I just want to touch on 12 years in the bakery in Corowa. Council did regularly send around food inspectors. Is that done outsourced, or have we got some internally now that actually does that?
We're actually doing most of it internally now, or a lot of it internally. We still do outsource some that we're aware of, but most of it's done with our own staff these days.
Yeah, I think that's great, because it was certainly a burden and a cost on the council to bring something, which I think they came from Jerilderie or somewhere at the time to do those inspections. And the other thing that is also pleasing is that we now have a balance right across the food. There's no one business saying, well, why are you picking on me? and normally when these food inspectors come around, they were quite picky, and you'd be sort of sitting there thinking, well, how come we've got to do it, but business B is not doing it? I haven't heard any feedback from any of the inspections, but they've been hardly dealt by, and I think that's because the business is up to scratch, so well done to everybody.
Thank you, Councillor Waters. Any further questions or comments? If not, I'll put it. All in favour? Aye. Against? Carried.
Item 10.4, Mayor's Compliance and Enforcement Policy, which we brought forward. This is just to simply put it on public display. It's based on the New South Wales Ombudsman's. He has a published, or they have a published enforcement guidelines for council, and this policy is based on that. Really word for word, to be quite honest. It was a little bit hard to go away from it, but there's a recommendation there that we endorse that for public exhibition.
Yeah. Moved by Councillor Law, seconded by Councillor Legal. Any questions or comments? If not, I'll put it all in favour. Against? Carried.
10.5 is the How Long Sewage Treatment Plant. There are a number of closed roads, or brown roads, whatever you like to call them, around that particular facility. We're just recommending that we start proceedings to purchase those and then consolidate it into part of the plant, the land around the treatment plant out there.
Moved by Councillor Longmire, seconded by Councillor Law. Question, Councillor Longmire?
Yeah, just if we go ahead and move on this action, how does it come that we don't perhaps wait for the LEP process to come into position before we go ahead? Because there's been some concern from our vacant councillor from Howlong at the moment about something in the growth of Howlong. Is that relevant, that if we move this, the LEP comes along afterwards?
I don't see it as a problem. I mean, the LEP is going to be 12, 18 months, 2 years, probably 12 months before it comes in. If at some stage council decides they want to relocate the garbage and the sewage plant, that process is going to take outlive me. But it's a long-term thing, and it may be that council needs to consider that as part of the LEP. I don't see that this has a great bearing on it. If you don't want to do it at this stage, we could defer it for the time being. It's not something we urgently need to do. There is abundant land around those areas which we can still use. So
there hasn't been an absolute reason for this to happen, Mr. Carmichael?
It's not that they're just sitting there, we lease them out. If they come back under our control, that then forms part of that parcel of land and it's ours. And at the moment, we sort of, it's a bit of a no man's land. We're not in the farming business, so you've really got to lease them out. If you get somebody in there that the lease doesn't go quite right, you've then got to get somebody else in. There's a few other problems. This was just seen as a way to tidy the whole area up, and it'll all be definitely under our control.
Okay. Well, Councillor Longmire, just on that question, I'm just wondering, these parcels would have been a part of the proposal for the compost facility, would they not? Originally, that we were trying to. There was moves on board to get some Crown land, which wasn't managed by council at the time, for the compost facility to go ahead. And if that was the case, I'm a bit of the same opinion that maybe they should be left as they are, because they're not part of council's land packages until we have settlement or we've firmed up our position that way.
I think it's a wise suggestion you could be making, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Mr. Parker.
Could I just give you an update on that? The road that you were talking about in question, we had previously purchased that close road sometime early last year. So these ones here aren't the ones that you're referring to.
Okay. Because that closed road, that must have gone through.
It was
still
being through.
It was within the landfill. It was still pending, yeah. Okay, so it doesn't affect it.
No.
With council on, by the way, you could defer it and bring it back to the next meeting if you like.
Well, if that's okay, I mean, if that's acceptable to the council, I think it could be. If it does, Mr. Councillor Longley's had a viewpoint on this, and thank you for mentioning Mr. Carmichael in regard to that. Is that an option we can do?
Absolutely. Defer the report, councillors.
Yeah. If it's not, important at this point.
That's fine.
So. So can I move an amendment on that regard? Well, how does it
Or
go?
you
Oh,
can
change
Just withdraw that one.
withdraw it and the mover was, sorry? Councillor Longmire and Councillor Law?
Yeah.
Happy with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Refer to a future council meeting.
Yes. Okay, if there's no further questions, I'll put it. All in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried.
Thank you.
Item 10.6 is engineering guidelines for subdivision and development standards. It's a new manual we've had rewritten and we've done a lot of work on it internally. All we're proposing with this is we put it on public display and invite comment from the community. So, and presumably the draft was sent around to everybody else. It's a fairly extensive document. We would like to just get some public feedback on it before we actually recommend to council that they formally adopt it.
Moved by Councillor Law and seconded by Councillor Thomas. Any questions or comments, councillors? If not, I'll put it. All in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried.
Item 10.7 is the companion animals management plan. This and 10.8, the local orders policy keeping animals and birds are put on public display, which we had no comments back. So the recommendations for 10.7 is that they may be adopted.
Okay, we've got a mover being Councillor Kennedy and seconded Councillor Longmire.
Question.
And question from Councillor Longmire.
Yeah, I bring to council's attention that there has been a confusion in one situation within the community of Corowa in regard to the override of the LEP against the compliance of animals retention. Because as I understand it, the LEP overrides this section, or it has done, in one particular issue in Corowa. So I'm just not sure how it goes about. If we adopt this as it's reported, do we also note that we, in the LEP, that there is something there to refer to the fact that there is a conflict with the situation?
10.7, the companion.
10.7, yeah.
10.7 or 10.8?
Companion
No,
animals.
we're just doing 10.7.
It's 10.7 we're doing now.
Companion.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to identify is that there has been an issue in past times, not so long ago, that the General Manager is aware of in regard to there's been a conflict with people attending to above and the numbers of animals that they're allowed to house on a residence in Corowa that was conflicting and was absolutely upsetting neighbours, but it was overridden under the companion animals opportunity by the LEP because of land use availability. That's what I'm referring to.
Right.
I'm not sure what we can do about it, but it's an awareness that I've been contacted with and have been involved in facilitating the opportunity between a council officer and some of the people involved.
I'm just wondering with that next 10.8, which one would be most relevant to that question? You think 10.7?
It might be more to the next one.
I'm not aware of the circumstances, but I would have thought that this would have overridden the LEP would have the planning regulation, but this actually relates to the keeping of the animals. And I thought this would have been the governing legislation as far as the keeping of the animals. The LEP may have some specific things which it probably does.
It was challenged. It was challenged by a person in regard to keeping the more than compliance opportunity number of animals, and council had no room to move because it was the overrider. That's what Mr. Butler, I'm not sure if you've got anything you'd be able to.
Yeah, so it was a zoning permissibility type issue with boarding kennels and boarding house and the number of. So I think and we had legal advice on it. I think the framework and that's all here. It's about how we apply that and whether it can stick or not. But yeah, it is a drawn out one. And yeah, I know both sides had pretty strong.
So the question I'd ask: are we going in the right direction with this adoption?
Yeah, I think we need to. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It just
fine.
gives us further strength.
Thank you for that.
That's the next one.
These are based on state guidelines as well. It's not stuff we thought up. It's stuff that's out there that nearly every council has very similar policies in place.
One thing that, when I started going through that act, I didn't do it thoroughly, but I noticed animals bred for sale or for profit need to be registered under a business act or whatever. Makes it very difficult when you've got someone that's, you know, got a bitch and decided to, you know, pass on a few pups. I think it's sort of a bit overboard, really, isn't it? Like, it happens all the time where people have pets to offer or exchange, and to have to go to those lengths to be able to, you know, sell them or whatever.
7 weeks ago.
I think what I'm trying to describe is a land use opportunity under the LEP. That's what it came down. That is the bigger factor than what the companion animals law is. The land use is the overrider.
Yeah. And the conditions you put on the DA and enforcing them.
Well, I was acknowledging that too, but like even just for pets, people having pets for sale or for profit, they might only have a couple of bitches or whatever. Or in the case of bird keeping aviaries, a DA required. Where does it start and stop? Anyway, any further comments?
So we're still only talking about 10.7, we haven't got...
We're
yes,
still,
that's correct.
yeah.
There's a couple of things different in 10.8, but...
Yeah.
Yep, good point.
Okay. What would you like to do with 10.7? We've got a mover and a seconder.
Yep.
I'll put it, if there's no further questions. All in favour? Against, carried. 10.8.
Got 10.8 is the local orders policy, keeping the animals and birds.
This might be the one that's more relevant.
Again, there's a recommendation there, said it's been on public display.
Okay, moved by Councillor Whitechurch, seconded by Councillor Kennedy. Questions or comments? Councillor Whitechurch.
Mr Mayor, and that's why I was getting a bit confused of where Councillor Longmire was, because there were some issues in there and I didn't bring them up in the release of the draft because I'd wait and see what the public consultation period brought out, and obviously it's brought no recommendations and it's probably one of those policies that go on display and people don't tend to read it, and you touched on it there, Mr Mayor, regarding birds. I've had birds in the past, I haven't got any now, but there's people, the birds part of that says that the aviary has to be 1 metre off the fence. Now I would be sure that there wouldn't be a person that would sit their aviary off the fence if they had an aviary 3 or 4 metres long. The other thing that is obviously with the cats, but the dogs. There's a fairly big issue at the moment in the town. It happened recently with one of our moteliers down Federation Avenue. Got one of their alpacas mauled by a dog. People had said that the same dogs, or referred to the same dogs, had attacked sheep. It's how long's getting hammered with dogs roaming the street. I know that we can't be there all the time, and it's up to the person that owns it. But you look at some of the things that are in the requirements for keeping a dog and for keeping a bird, and as you say, applying for a DA and getting council approval, I'm sure that we're probably not doing that. If we're going to implement a policy, is every person that goes and buys a couple of birds to put in their aviary, are they coming, are they aware that they've got to come to council? Are we having a policy there just so that we can enforce something? Because if a neighbour moves into somebody that's had birds for 15 years and their parrots are against the fence, they're well within their right to enforce 7.1.4 of the policy to say that it's got to be 1 metre off the fence. A hard one, I guess, but if we're going to implement a policy, which, as Councillor Longmire is saying, the rules are there and we've got to effectively stick by it, and it makes it very, very hard for a council officer to then go and say, no, it's been there for 15 years, and I know that you've only got 2 budgery guards in it, so it's got to be pulled down and moved. And I'd like to have a look at something we can do with the wild dogs as well, because it's certainly an issue around the whole Shire, or certainly at the moment.
One of the reasons we brought this up, at the moment we've got nothing.
Yep.
So our enforcement officers go there, they may know what the law is through training that they do and what have you, but at the moment our hands are tied because we can't. If somebody's complaining because a bird cage is right up against their neighbour's fence, we've got no way. We've now got this policy, we can start to, and hopefully we'll. It won't be just bang, this is what's got to be done. There's got to be some negotiation most of the time. Where that leads sometimes can end up anywhere, but at least at the moment, if we endorse this, we've got a policy then that we can start to crack down on some of those ones. At the moment, our hands are tied a bit because we just haven't got the policy behind us to back us up.
Sure. Just,
Councillor, we'll finish Councillor Whitechurch.
yeah, sorry, through you again, Mr Mayor, I appreciate that, Mr Carmichael, and that, I totally agree that we've got nowhere to go unless we've got a policy, but I would like to, in sort of line with what Councillor Longmire is saying, have a bit of give and take and common sense prevailing, not a hard drawn line in the sand. But I would still like something to be addressed now with maybe an increased level of checking for dogs and that sort of thing, because there's certainly a lot of dogs creating a bit of havoc around the area.
And of course, would that apply to that policy be enacted? Would it relate to past situations?
No, it's going.
It'd be going forward.
We need to go forward.
Okay, Councillor Thomas.
Not retrospective.
This is in relation to animal husbandry, and would it be the perfect opportunity with the release of this particular policy to look at really encouraging our residents, you know, to look at the basic animal husbandry practices of, you know, desexing animals that they may not breed from, microchipping their dogs, doing a bit of a rollout of a campaign. And I'm also thinking too, when domestic animals, some of those targeted species, go wrong and they're not wanted anymore, the environmental impact is you know, exponential. So I'm just thinking, could we take this opportunity and roll out a bit of a campaign along those lines, if that was appropriate?
Certainly can.
Thank you. Well, we've got a mover and second. Any further comments, councillors? If not, we'll put it. All in favour? Against? Carried.
I think I've got a pretty good run home here. I think all the rest of them really go to 10.9 as the Howland Industrial Estate, with the recommendation it goes to close.
Okay, it was moved by Councillor Meagle, seconded by Councillor Thomas. Any questions or comments on that, councillors? If not, I'll put it. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried.
10.10 is the tenders for the preparation of the LNP.
So moved.
Recommended go to council, to close to council, sorry.
Moved by Councillor Longmire, seconded by Councillor Kennedy. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried.
10.11 is contract 1912 for drill, blast and crush services at council's quarries, going to confidential.
Moved by Councillor Meagle, seconded by Councillor Thomas. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried.
10.12 is dry hire, contract 1915, going to go to confidential.
Moved by Councillor Law, seconded by Councillor Longmire. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried.
For the 10.13 is contract 1917, supply of quarry products, going to confidential.
Moved by Councillor Law, seconded by Councillor Kennedy. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried.
And 10.14 is the replacement of the tipper in Urana, going to go to confidential.
Moved by Councillor Wales, seconded by Councillor Longmire. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried.
That's my lot.
And thank you very much, Steve. And councillors, would someone like to move to suspend standing orders? Moved by Councillor Law, seconded by Councillor Longmire. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. We'll have a break for a coffee, councillors, or stretch your legs.
Yes.
I meant to go to the end, but I think there's a bug all there.